we'll open up the question and answer session. Go ahead, Monica. So the first thing I want to make sure everybody is aware of is that we do have a new website. We were fortunate last summer to be able to work with the fine folks over at Drupal to have get our website updated. And so the school finance website does look a little different than it has in the past. What you're looking at right now is our homepage, and the link to get to that homepage is up at the top of the slide. Where those arrows are pointing are the two areas that we're going to be, where you can find the resources that we're going to be discussing today. Go ahead, Monica. The first arrow that was towards the middle of the screen is what's highlighted here in yellow. This is where you can find all of our guidance regarding COVID, and it does contain information, school finance related information regarding attendance and absences during the last year or so. So it pertains to fiscal year, a portion of fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. You can see in the screenshot here below the blue bar there that it does tell you when the information has been updated, a date and a time, so that you're aware of when we posted that information. And you'll be able to go into this location and open up that blue bar that specifically says attendance and absences, and be able to see the information there that specifically relates to COVID, to attendance being taken during COVID. This page states that a student should be counted as in attendance for any days on which the student participates in distance learning instruction in accordance with the submitted and approved distance learning plan. So at the beginning of this year, every LEA was asked to submit a distance learning plan informing the Department of Education of how they intended to instruct, as long as students are meeting your requirements that you stated in your DLP of what attendance was going to constitute, or what would constitute attendance, and that student would be considered in attendance. It does state on the bottom, and you'll note this just for future reference for later in the presentation, that the process to generate non-fundable intervals for students that accumulate excessive absences is not being enforced for fiscal year 21. Next slide, please. The next page that I want to make sure you're aware of is where you can find our external guidelines. So on the menu bar, which is the rectangle to the left there, you'll be able to click on School Finance External Guidelines. You'll see that the blue bar that says defining excused absences. There's a whole bunch of external guidelines on that page. When you open up the one that says defining excused absences, it has a link within it that will take you directly to the document where ADE has defined excused absences. In 15901, it states that excused absences are identified by the Department of Education, and this is where you can find our definition of that. Next slide, please. And this is the definition of excused absences. We define them as absences due to illness, doctor's appointment, bereavement, family emergency, or out of school suspension. Those reasons are considered excused by the Department of Education. Absences due to religious reasons or family vacations can be identified as excused, but that's a local decision for your LEA to make. That isn't a decision we at ADE have left that up to you all to determine locally if you'll consider absences due to religious reasons or family vacations as excused or not. So again, we define excused absences as illness, doctor appointment, bereavement, family emergency, or out of school suspension. Next slide, please. It's important to note that statute does require that students between the ages of 6 and 16 must attend school. If for some reason they are not in school, they have to either be excused by 15802, be accompanied by a parent or an authorized person, or they have to be a homeschooled student, a student in a private school, or a student who's on an ESA voucher. Next slide. Now we're going to talk a little bit about chronic health absences, which has become kind of a hot button topic for this year. So in statute 15346, it states that that your governing board, your local governing board, has to adopt policies and procedures concerning students with chronic health problems. And chronic health absences or chronic health illness is defined as a student who's not homebound. It's important to make that distinction because there are different requirements for each. Chronic health illness students are unable to attend their regular classes for intermittent period of times. These are one or more consecutive days, and it has to be due to an illness, disease, or pregnancy complications. And those illnesses, diseases, or pregnancy complications have to be certified by a licensed health professional or registered nurse. And that comes straight from statute. It has to be a licensed health professional or registered nurse who certifies that a student qualifies for a chronic health illness. And that certification has to state the medical condition that's preventing the student from attending. Please note that a student who has a chronic illness has to be submitted to AZEDS with a chronic illness support need, and documentation of that certification has to be maintained for audit purposes. If you've ever gone through an audit, you'll know that they will go back and ask you to produce those certifications from a licensed health professional, showing that the student was determined to be chronically ill. Go ahead and put the next step, please. Now we're going to talk about unexcused absences. If an absence occurs relating to any other reason, so we went over the list of what's considered excused. If an absence occurs that's related to anything other than those things, it's considered unexcused. If the absence doesn't meet the guideline requirements to be considered excused, even if a parent or guardian has excused the absence, it is considered unexcused. So, and this is the guidance that our audit department uses. It's important for you to know that because, we've heard from folks who say, but mom or dad or so and so's guardian called in to excuse them. That parents and guardians don't get to determine what constitutes an excused absence. It has to fall into those the list of excused absences that we have defined at through that guideline that I showed you how to get to. If those absences are not considered excused based on that guideline, then the absence should be marked as unexcused in your student information system, and that's how it should be submitted to us. And the audit team is going to go back and look for those. It's really important to make sure you understand the difference between when an absence is excused and when it's not, and that you're recording them accordingly in your student information system. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk a little bit about the 10-day unexcused absence rule. So students who are absent for 10 consecutive school days, except for excused absences identified within the guidance, which are again that list that we went over, shall be withdrawn. This is directly from our guidance as well, and this is according to 15901. These students are funded for the period of their membership, meaning if a student starts with you in August and attends all the way through September, then all of a sudden has 10 consecutive unexcused absences at the beginning of October, that student is going to be funded for the period of time that they were in membership prior to their withdrawal. And this rule is in effect for all years, including fiscal year 21. There was a question during the last Ask Us meeting of whether or not this rule pertained to the current school year, and nothing in the executive orders has waived this requirement. So this is still required for fiscal year 21. Next slide, please. This is just a little visual that I wanted to put together to help explain the 10-day unexcused absence rule. It's important to make sure that you guys understand how to look for these absences and make sure that they're recorded correctly in your student information system. So this student was absent starting on the 2nd and continued to have absences all the way through the 12th. But then on the 13th, that student attended for a half day. Even though that student was absent for a portion of the day on the 13th, they attended for a half day. And the requirement states it has to be 10 consecutive unexcused absences. If the student attended for a portion of the day, then that wouldn't be considered part of 10 consecutive unexcused absences. Now, the next week, the student continues to be absent. They're out from the 16th all the way through the 30th. But on the 25th, there's a holiday. those holidays count as, and when I say holiday, I mean a non-instructional day. So those days count, it's just like a weekend day. You skip right over it and keep on counting those consecutive absences. So in this scenario, the student accumulates 10 consecutive absences from the 16th through the 30th, and their exit date is the 13th, which is the last day that the student attended. Go ahead, Monica, next slide. Now we'll talk a little bit about truancy. And the reason why we're talking about truancy is because we've had a lot of questions this year about what do we do with students who are just not showing up? So we wanted to provide you with the information that we found in statute to hopefully help just provide you with some guidance. You can find the definition of truancy in 15803, and it's an unexcused absence for at least one class period. That came from statute. It also states there that absences may be considered excessive when the absent days exceed 10% of the number of required attendance days in the student's calendar. That's important to remember, that absences are considered excessive when they've exceeded the 10% of the number of required days in the student's calendar. So attendance officers can enforce the law relating to children being required to attend school. You'll remember on an earlier slide that we talked about which students are required to attend school, the ages of students who are required to attend, and if they're not attending, what those circumstances should be if they're not in attendance. So if a student falls within that age range and doesn't meet any of those other requirements and is not attending school, that student should be considered truant, can be considered truant. Um, some schools have an attendance officer on site that they can refer these students to. If you don't have an attendance officer, you can contact your local police department for assistance, and they'll provide you with some guidance or access to somebody who can help you with that. But there is actually law that requires students to attend, again, that fall into those guidelines that I talked about earlier. If the students are not attending, the law needs to be enforced by an officer of the law. They are the ones that can enforce that law, and so it would be we recommend that you refer them to your local attendance officer, or that you contact your local police department if you need assistance with students who are truant. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about non-fundable intervals. So back in June of 2018, we posted a guideline that you can find on that external guidelines page that I talked about earlier. And in that guideline, it states that, just like we discussed on the last slide, that there's a threshold of 10% that it's considered excessive absences. When a student who has reached that 10% threshold for cumulative excused and unexcused absences, and they incur additional absences, they might generate non-fundable ADM intervals in AZEDs. Even though they may generate those non-fundable intervals in AZEDs, the next line in that guideline says that those prolonged absence periods, with or without a gap in membership or across reporting periods, will be identified as non-fundable intervals. And that's for any period of 10 or more consecutive absences. That's whether they're excused or unexcused. And this guideline was applicable for fiscal year 19 forward, excluding fiscal year 21. So I'm going to say that again. Back in June of 2018, we posted a guideline. You can find it on our external guideline page. It's also linked here, which we're going to post these presentation slides for you to be able to review. That guideline states that if a student has hit that threshold of 10% accumulative excused or unexcused absences based on their calendar, and they continue to incur periods of absence that consist of 10 or more consecutive absences, whether they're excused or unexcused, those will be identified as non-fundable intervals. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I want to just talk a little bit and make sure everybody understands how these non-fundable intervals can look on your end when you're looking at your student data. So student A is on a 180-day calendar. This student has accumulated 18 absences within their first 100 days, and the 18 absences would constitute hitting the 10% threshold. A parent or guardian excuses a student for a 2-week family vacation, and again, that occurs within the first 100 days. This student's family vacation, even though your local policy has stated that family vacations are excused absences, and the parent or guardian has excused the student for that period of time, would still be identified as a non-fundable interval because they've exceeded the 10% excessive absence threshold. So it's important to make sure you're understanding the full concept. First 100 days, student accumulates 18 absences. That's the 10% threshold. Student is then absent for another 10 consecutive absences. Regardless of whether those absences are excused or not excused, that constitutes a non-fundable interval because they've exceeded the 10% excessive absence threshold. Let's go to the next slide, Monica. Student B is on a 144-day calendar. This student accumulates 15 absences within the first 100 days. Again, that's where they hit the 10% threshold for excessive absences. The student becomes ill and is absent for an additional 12 consecutive days within the first 100 days, but is not a documented chronic illness. This student's illness, even though it's excused based on our guidance, would still be identified, or the period of absence would still be identified as a non-fundable interval because they've exceeded the 10% excessive absence threshold. So same concept, but 144-day calendar. The student hits 15 absences. That hits the threshold. That's the 10% threshold is hit there. Then they have another period of more than 10 consecutive days of absence. And it's important to note that they would be consecutive days. So if the kid, missed school for 6 days, showed up for 2 days, missed school for another 6 days, that's not 10 consecutive days. This is specific to they have to hit that 10% threshold, then they have to have an additional 10 or more consecutive days of absences, excused or unexcused, and it would occur within the first 100 days in order for it to be considered non-fundable. That's clear. Okay, next slide. So that's the end of our presentation with regard to those topics there. There are some announcements that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. SDER closed this week. You can see there Monica has just put up the link to get to be able to submit your questions. Please go ahead and open that in a different tab, and you can submit your questions there for us. As I go through these announcements, we'll be collecting the questions there, and I'll pull up the link myself so that I can go in and read through your questions and hopefully get as many answered as possible. While you're doing that, SDER has closed. The information has now been pushed to the SDER 96 report, and I've linked there where those reports can be found in case you should need it. We have sent out a training survey. Right now, it's only gone to charters, but it will be going to districts as well. We're looking for your help to beef up the training and information that we provide to you, to the field. So the wonderful Monica has created a great survey for us, and this isn't just for the operations side of school finance, it's also for budgets and payments. And we're asking you questions to help us better understand how what kind of training you need, what method of training works best for you, what medium of training works best for you, and we want to hear your feedback. We want to know what information it is that you're missing and how we can reach you to make sure you get that information. It's important to us to be a partner with you in this process to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure you get the funding that you work so hard for every day, that everybody in your district works so hard for every day. So please, when you do get that link, if you've already gotten it and you did respond, thank you so much. If you received it and haven't responded, please go in and respond. It will be open until next Wednesday. And we'll send out a reminder on Monday to make sure folks who haven't responded do get an opportunity to. And then we'll be reformatting the survey and sending it out to the district folks. And the way that you'll get the notification of that survey is through our new email system, or our new mass email system, I guess I should say, which is SendGrid. So I'm sure many of you know that there was a period of time there where where our hot topics and our announcements weren't getting sent out to you through email. They were still being posted on our website, but the system that we used to send those announcements directly to you all was shut down and replaced, and we had to wait until everything was set up on the back end in order to be able to start sending you out communications using SendGrid. We have a fantastic new office manager. Her name is Shireen Gray, and we owe her a great debt of gratitude. She's gone in and created all of our lists for us so that we can start sending those out. For those of you who were already on our hot topics list, who had already gone onto our website and asked to, registered to receive emails from us or notifications from us, you are already included in the list that we had. We pulled that information before that system went away, and we moved it into SendGrid, so we already have your information there. And we are using those lists to send out these announcements. Their announcements, their memos, hot topic announcements, reminders, anything that needs to go out like it used to go out through MailChimp will now go out through SendGrid. If for some reason you feel like maybe you're not receiving things from us, it's a little new to us. So give us some time. We're working. We worked on those lists a little bit this week, and it's going to continue to be a work in progress. If you feel like you're not, by all means, you can send an email to the school finance inbox, just the main inbox, because Shireen is the one who oversees that, and she's happy to add you into whatever list you'd like to be in. A little update on merges. I want to say it was about a year or so ago, maybe a little over a year ago, that I made an announcement that we were still sitting at over 3,000 tickets in our old ticketing system, which were 99.9% merges. I'm happy to report that last week I got an update and we're just at over 1,200 now. So my team is a team of 6 people. They service all LEAs from a school finance operations perspective. And in addition to all the work that they're doing every single day to make sure and help you um, make sure that your data is correct, help you work through any issues with your data, help you with your 915s for data issues, with your transportation 915s, with your STDR data, all of those wonderful things that they do. They've also continued to chip away at the number of merges to get caught up as quickly as we can. We appreciate your patience, your continued patience with it, but we do want you to know that we are making progress, and we're now down to just about 1,200 in that system. Of course, we're getting new merges every single day in our new ticketing system, but we are making progress on them. And that brings us to talk about help desk. We are working on, Shireen and I are actually working on a help desk help page. We're going to create a new page that's going to help guide you to make sure that you're using the proper templates for the requests that you're submitting to us. We want to make sure that you have the resources that you need in order to submit your requests correct the first time. So it's not just going to say for this, use this template. It's also going to tell you what is needed within that template or what additional documents you're going to have to attach. So that's a work in progress. Something that's actually just gotten done or going to be put up today is our presentation page. So within the Knowledge Center, when you click on our menu item of Knowledge Center, you'll see we've added a new section to the bottom of that for presentations. We're working on posting that presentation page today. That presentation page will have all the presentations from the current fiscal year by category of where they were presented. So Ask Us or Guppy Mac or ASBO, any of those places. And then it'll also just have them listed by date. And it also, each one of them has a little description on there of what it is that we went over in that presentation so that you can have those in a PDF format, easy to download. You can go back and refer to them or click on the links as you need them. Okay, so I am going to go over and open that slides. Oh, here we go. What report is non-fundable calculations on? Thank you, Monica. We are in the process of working with IT to get that information into a report that you'll be able to see. Right now, that is something that we're working on. Um, but again, for fiscal year 21, there it is not in place. So that the rule for non-fundable intervals is not in place for fiscal year 21. The purpose of explaining it today was because it came up at the Ask Us presentation and people had questions on what it was and what it meant. So I wanted to provide you with that information so you know where to find the guidance on it. But again, it's not in place for fiscal year 21. Go ahead, Monica. Yes. The question is, will this live stream be posted as a video instantly once it concludes? Yes, it will be posted as a video on our YouTube page. So it'll be posted automatically to the YouTube page. You'll see one in there that's for 8 seconds. Disregard. We were having technical difficulties. This one will be posted automatically there, and you'll be able to go back and review it. Again, we'll go back and add any of these questions right now that pertain to the topics that we discussed into the actual slides to beef those up and re-record it. Go ahead. How will schools be audited on hybrid learning schedule instruction minutes? So schools are going to be audited based on what they put in their DLP. From what I understand from the audit department, and again, I'm not the audit department, but from what I understand from the audit department is that they'll be using your distance learning plan that you submitted in order to determine what you intended to do for the year, and then they're going to use that to make sure you did the things that you intended to do. Go ahead, Monica. A parent calls to excuse a student, but it's not medical. What proof would a school district need, and what if we don't get the proof? So so unexcused, or I'm sorry, let me go back. Excused absences are defined in our external guideline. That guideline is defining excused absences. You'll find within it the list of what is excused and what's not excused. Excused absences, according to the Department of Education, are absences due to illness, doctor appointment, bereavement, family emergencies, and out of school suspensions. If a parent or guardian calls up and says, my student is out for one of these reasons, that is considered an excused absence. If a parent or guardian calls in and says, my student is absent for any reason other than those, that absence would not be considered excused, even though you've received a phone call from a parent or guardian. So remember, it's a local decision on whether or not religious absences or family vacations are considered excused. That's for you all at the local level to determine. But for the purposes of ADE, if a parent or guardian calls in and says their student is ill, has a doctor's appointment, has bereavement, a family emergency, or if that student is on an out of school suspension, that student would be considered excused. Go ahead, Monica. Looks like we're waiting to see if we get any more questions. Again, I just want to apologize to you guys. Thank you for those who hung in here with us. We're so sorry for the technical difficulties. We apologize that we weren't able to get on right at 10 o'clock. Again, this will be posted to our YouTube page immediately once it's done. And we'll make sure that any folks who missed that get that link so that they can go watch this. We are always accepting your questions through help desk. We encourage you to use help desk for anything that you need from school finance. There are many templates in there, and there's even just a general how-to template. So if you're not sure which template to use for your issue until we get that help desk page up, please just use the general how-to template, and my team will help guide you in the right direction. Part of the reason why we ask you to use specific templates in help desk is because those templates have all of the fields in them that we need in order to process that specific type of request. So it's important to make sure that you are using the proper template. If you're not sure which one to use, let us help you with that. Submit a general how-to request, and we'll make sure you know which template needs to be filled out. And I want to make sure everybody remembers that, again, my team consists of 6 people. We're servicing everybody across the state, every LEA, every AZEDS coordinator, every registrar, every business manager who has requests like this. They all get sent in to 6 people. And those 6 people are working so hard every single day to make sure that they respond to your tickets. And so we want to make sure that you understand that we do ask that you allow us 5 days in order to respond to your request, because we are trying to get to everybody at the same time. So please be understanding of that component. Here's another question: if we don't understand the template, if you don't understand, so if you don't understand the template, you can always give us a call. Our phone number is on the last slide of the presentation. You can always call us. We've had a couple of glitches over the past, I don't know, month and a half or so, where the phone lines have been down or we've had some sort of issue with them. Beyond that, our phone lines are open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And my team works really hard to coordinate together and make sure there's always ample coverage on the phones. Even though we might not be in the physical building down on Jefferson, we are able to still take your phone calls, and we are happy to do whatever we can. We completely understand if sometimes you just need a human person to explain it. We're happy to do that for you. Are there any more integrity rule changes coming before the end of the year? The play changes make it difficult for school districts. We completely understand. When things are difficult for you, they're difficult for us. There's a standard rule that gets triggered in April. I'm sure somebody on my team will send me an IM and correct me if I'm wrong, about end of year codes that are required. I'm not sure if it kicks off in April or in May, but you'll want to make sure if you don't have those in already that they do get entered in. Um, but that's a standard rule that happens every single year. It doesn't show up all year long, and then all of a sudden it gets triggered, and it requires you to enter that information to make sure you've got it in before the end of your school year. I know there are some rules that the SPED team is working on. I know that we've been working on some changes to DRP rules, but they're really more ensuring that everything is working properly on our end and making sure that the rule itself, as it appears in the documentation on the AZEDS page, is accurate and user friendly. Um, to my knowledge, we don't have any additional integrity rule changes coming before the end of the year, and I have asked. I've asked the IT team to please make sure that before they do add new integrity rules in, that those rules are documented on their pages. Again, that's an ask on my part. I know that Adi is working really hard, and that he was going to try to get in the most recent rule that was put in place before this meeting. I asked him to kindly do that before I got onto this webinar, so hopefully that's done now. Are there any other questions? If excused, thank you, Rosalia, for sending this in. If excused absences have already been submitted and they did not meet any of those categories, what will happen? If you should be audited, those excused absences will be audited and changed to unexcused. What my recommendation would be is that if those absences occurred within the current school year, that you go back and change those absences yourself and then resubmit that data. If you need assistance with how to resubmit it, I'm sure that your vendor would be happy to help you with that. We don't work in student information systems, so we can't tell you how to change things or what you should do on your end to make sure that the change gets submitted to us. But we can help you verify on our end in our reports that the changes have been made. So my recommendation would be that if it's within the current school year, you change those absences, make sure that they follow the guidance, and get those submitted into AZEDS before the end of the fiscal year. The executive order signed 2 days ago states LEAs need to submit to ADE that they are compliant with the order by March 15th. Will guidance be sent to districts and charters regarding this? Um, so we are just having conversations about that this week, much like with the distance learning plans. The distance learning plan information did not go to school finance. It went to other departments. My assumption is that the communications department will be sending information out regarding where to send that to. I personally in school finance don't have not been given a directive that we're going to be collecting that information or validating it. And so I would look for updates to the main COVID guidance page on the ADE website for that. And I'm certain that our communications department will send out a statewide communication to all of the contacts that they have, updating them on where that guidance needs to be sent. If you're audited on those absences, what would ADE want to see for proof? And if our local district allows for family vacations to be excused, what would happen? Nothing happens. If you're audited on those absences, you should have documentation of when parents are calling in for students. You should have a documented log on your end of who contacted you. It's been a long time since I worked at a school, so bear with me, and I'm sure someone on my team will correct me if I'm wrong. But you need to have a documented log on your end that you're maintaining of stu- parents or guardians who have contacted you to excuse an absence. And what I did when I worked at a school was we on a monthly basis would go through, select 10, 15 different instances and make sure we would check it both ways. So go through the log, make sure that what was on the log matched what was in the student information system, go through and select 10 or 15 different absences in the student information system, go back and verify that those were that there was documentation on the log that showed that the student had that we had been contacted by someone to excuse those absences. We would also verify those against the well, at the time, teachers kept paper attendance. So we would verify that against the teacher's attendance in each of the students' classes. But we would line everything up that in essence should be lined up and match across the board. And then we would make sure that everything lined up. Um, if with regard to the family vacation, again, I just want to say that's what we did. You're at the local level. You need to decide what you have, what articles you have that would lend to providing proof that an absence was excused or not excused, and a parent or guardian called in or did not. With regard to family vacations, it should be documented in your local documentation that your district allows vacations to be considered excused. We don't need to see anything beyond that as far as audit goes. If we do have a policy around vacations and religious holidays are excused, we still need to submit them to AZETS as unexcused. No, that's not correct. If we have ADE has given you the local decision to determine whether those are excused or unexcused. Monica has put up the slide here. These are the absences that we define as excused absences. Down below it, it states absence due to religious reasons and family vacations can be defined as excused by each district. If you have them defined in your district as excused absences, then that's what we expect to see on our end. Much like with the distance learning plan, what you tell us is going to happen, we should expect to see on our end. Regarding audit on hybrid learning schedule instructional minutes. What if the DLP doesn't have a level of detail auditors need, even though the plan was accepted? The From what I understand from the auditing team, and we can get some more information from them, they are going to audit to what you submitted in your DLP. Everybody understands across the agency, fiscal year 21 is an anomaly of a year. So we can only audit to, as far as I understand, we can only audit to what it is that you've told us you intended to do. And so they're going to go back and pull your DLP, and they're going to say, this is what you said you were going to do. You were going to hop on one foot and hula hoop for 10 minutes and then draw circles on the board. Did you do each of those three things? If you did those three things, then that's what they have to go off of. They can only audit to what you said you intended to do, is what I've understood from the audit team. Again, if you, I can get more information from our audit folks on that, but I believe as of now, that's their intention. Our registrars take the phone calls and mark. Uh, the registrar should. So I'm assuming we're talking about excused or unexcused absences. Um, that there should be something beyond just the phone call, as far as I understand it. Um, it shouldn't just there should be some sort of documentation. um, when I go in to take one of my kids out from school, there's a log I have to fill out. I have to put in, her student ID number, her name, what grade she's in, my name, what relation I am to her, and the reason for the absence. So there should be some other documentation, um, that's proof of what occurred, um, that caused your registrar to mark that student as excused in your system. An audit questionnaire would be helpful. I'm not sure what you mean, like what they're looking for. I actually have a meeting with audit next week. We do a quarterly meeting with them. If you can elaborate, or you want to send us an email or a general how-to on what you think might be helpful in that, in an audit questionnaire, I can definitely bring it to that meeting. Yes, absolutely. Can you have access to this presentation? Yes. So again, our new office manager, Shireen, has gone in and created a new page for us. We're working on getting that updated today. You're going to be able to find it in the Knowledge Center. So when you go to our homepage on the right-hand side where our menu is, you'll just click on Knowledge Center. Towards the bottom of that page, there's going to be a link to presentations. And when you click on that, you'll be able to go to the page where this presentation will live. We'll go ahead and put this one up as it is today. And then if we go back in and add any of these questions into the actual slides, we'll just update it there. But yes, you definitely can. And not only can you have access to this one, but all of the other presentations that have been done for fiscal year 21 will live there. So you'll have access to those as well. Ah, an audit webinar. Oh, okay. I can't make promises about an audit webinar, but I can certainly bring that up in my an audit compliant questionnaire. I think there's some other departments outside of the agency that give really good audit compliance questionnaires, that give really good compliance um, training. But I'll definitely bring these questions up with our audit department next week, and we'll see what we can do. This here is our last slide, and it has all of our information on it. There is our phone number on the left-hand side. Again, those phones are manned from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. We're happy to take your phone calls and help you in any way we can. Again, our goal is to be a partner with you in your efforts to make sure that your funding is accurate. We know how most of us on the team are parents. All of us have gone through school at some point. We have an appreciation for the work that you're doing, and we're doing our best to make sure that you get all of the funding goes to the districts that they work so hard for. The submit a help desk ticket will link there to help desk. Again, we respond to all tickets within 5 business days, or we do our best to respond within 5 business days. Our main page, our homepage is there at the bottom. And if you have questions about budgets or payments, you can email those teams directly. Thank you so much to everybody who participated today. Thank you for hanging out and waiting for us. We appreciate it. We're so sorry again for the technical difficulties that we experienced at the beginning of this. Forgiveness, please. Fiscal year 21 has been rough on our end too, but we're doing our best. And we thank you again. Hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, and we'll get these slides posted as quickly as possible. Thank you, everyone.